The hearing of the Subcommittee on Nutrition, Oversight, and Department Operations entitled A 2022 Review of the Farm Bill, Stakeholder Perspectives on SNAP will come to order. Welcome, and thank you for joining us here today. After brief opening remarks, members will receive testimony from our witnesses, and then the hearing will be open to questions. In consultation with the ranking member and pursuant to Rule 11E, I want to make members of the subcommittee aware that other members of the full committee may join us today. And now I'll start with my opening statement. Good morning, and welcome to today's hearing, a 2022 review of the Farm Bill, Stakeholder Perspectives on SNAP. This hearing is one in a series of hearings to review the 2018 Farm Bill and prepare for the 2023 Farm Bill. Today we will receive stakeholder input on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, the 2018 Farm Bill provisions that impact the program, and how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected SNAP operations and what we can do in the upcoming Farm Bill to build on the decades of success of the SNAP program in combating hunger and food insecurity in America. 41 million Americans currently participate in SNAP. Each of their stories are unique, and every person faces different challenges. So it is critically important that we understand that as part of our decision-making process. The positive impacts of SNAP have been particularly felt during the pandemic and are continuing to grow as participants receive more adequate benefits as a result of the 2021 Thrifty Food Plan reevaluation, which I know we will hear more about today from our witnesses. In 2020, SNAP is estimated to have lifted 2.9 million Americans out of poverty. It provided economic stimulus to households in every community across the nation, supporting local grocery stores, farmers, distributors, and creating jobs. It is clear that SNAP works, and it works for our entire economy, from farmers to consumers. Today, I am interested in hearing the ways we can improve upon the SNAP program and help make the program more equitable and accessible to those in need. SNAP is also a highly responsive, means-tested program which serves as a stabilizer in times of economic downturn. Participation rates are high right now because of the pandemic. However, we are already seeing participation decrease as Americans begin to recover. In September 2020, SNAP participation peaked at 43 million. As of February of this year, participation has dropped by nearly 2 million people. That's how SNAP works. It responds in times of need. Similarly, our farm support programs spend more when commodity prices are low. Our Farm Bill programs are designed that way because it just makes sense, and spending on both SNAP and farm programs fluctuates as a result. Increased SNAP costs are also due to continued COVID-19 relief, which is tied to the end of the public health emergency, inflation, and the Thrifty Food Plan revaluation, which assured that SNAP provided recipients with adequate support. Finally, in fiscal year 2021, 1 in 8 Americans, or 13% of our country, participated in SNAP. That means 1 in 8 Americans were not sure they would be able to put food on their tables. 1 in 8 Americans. But SNAP offered stability and assurance. Thank you again to the members and witnesses who are joining us here today, as well as those who have tuned in and are listening. I look forward to hearing more today about how we can improve outcomes for Americans facing food insecurity. I'd now like to welcome the distinguished ranking member, the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon, for any opening remarks he would like to give, and just to thank him for his help in just being a measured voice in these conversations. Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to our witnesses for sharing your time, your expertise with this subcommittee. I was a freshman throughout the drafting and finalizing of the 2018 Farm Bill, and to say the process is daunting and the work tremendous is simply an understatement. We got a lot of work to do, we know that. Policy is tough. It's exacerbated here by the reach and role of SNAP, a huge program, a program that's currently assisting more than 42 million people at a cost of $9 billion per month. This is why these hearings are so important, so we as policymakers can understand what is working and what is not and how we can improve. And the latter is equally as important as the former. I know the SNAP helps people who are in dire straits, but I also know that fuzzy interpretation of the law and regulatory loopholes lead to questions on the integrity and strength of the program, which I hope we can discuss today and make improvements. And equally important to today's conversation is an honest discussion about nutrition and health. We have a real opportunity to promote the consumption of healthy foods. What we are doing now is not working. Employment, healthcare costs, military readiness, and general longevity are highly dependent on the foods we consume. You as stakeholders, together with policymakers, the department, and other community organizations and local governments, and recipients themselves are uniquely positioned to improve the health outcomes of millions of people. So today, let's be bold. Let's rethink consumer education. Let's rethink how we can engage with recipients. And let's rethink how we use the billions of dollars attached to this program for better outcomes. So with that, Madam Chair, I'm glad this hearing is finally taking place, and I look forward to the testimony and my colleagues' questions. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. Let's be bold. I think we're on the same page. I now recognize Ranking Member Thompson for any opening comments you would like to make.
Madam Chair, thank you so much, and thank you to each of our witnesses for your time and your testimony today. When the full committee hosted the administration several weeks ago, I mentioned my frustration with colleagues who have drawn a line in the sand about future Title IV policymaking. Since then, the Congressional Budget Office released its baseline assumptions, which includes $1.1 trillion 10-year score related to SNAP. So I'm doubling down today. There are things we can improve and probably even a few policies we can upend. We do not need to spend for the sake of spending or because it makes us feel better. If there is no impact or the impact is so minimal, how can we defend it? Like many of you, I spent my life serving people, and sometimes our best intentions cause irreparable hardship for families that we aim to help. Spending more money for the sake of spending it does not necessarily mean we are achieving our desired results or outcomes. We have to be prescriptive in our investments to be successful. And based on testimony that we'll hear today, I also want to reiterate my concern that pandemic aid is morphing into endemic aid, and that various issues caused by this administration's own actions, and at times inaction, have stakeholders calling for permanent extensions. To say I disagree with those calls is an understatement. Let's have an honest discussion about where we've been and where we can go, while keeping in mind the overarching goal of SNAP to provide for improved levels of nutrition amongst low-income families that are struggling with financial distress. And with that, thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Thompson, and thank you so much for being here today. The chair would request that other members submit their opening statements for the record, so witnesses may begin their testimony and to ensure there is ample time for questions. I am pleased to welcome a distinguished panel of witnesses to our hearing today. Our witnesses bring a wide range of experience and expertise, and I thank you all for joining us. Our first witness today is joining us virtually, Mr. Daniel Giacomi, the SNAP Program Administrator for the State of Connecticut Department of Social Services. He leads the day-to-day operations of the the SNAP policy team and conducts oversight over the program in the state of Connecticut. This program helps over 217,000 households. Our second witness is Mr. Mike Beal, the Chief Financial Officer of Ball's Food Stores. Today, he is testifying on behalf of the National Grocers Association, the only trade association dedicated to the needs of independent, community-focused grocery retailers. Our third witness is Ms. Ty Jones-Cox, the Vice President of Food Assistance at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. In her role, she focuses on improving the effectiveness of the major federal nutrition programs, such as SNAP, for low-income and middle-class families. I'd like to welcome all of our witnesses here today. We will now proceed to hearing your testimony. You will each have 5 minutes. The timer should be visible to you and will count down to 0, at which point your time has expired. We will begin with Mr. Giacomi. Mr. Giacomi, when you are ready, please unmute yourself and begin. I'm sorry, Mr. Giacomi, can you hold for a second? I'm not sure what's happening. Oh, that's not Mr. Giacomi, that's someone on the phone. Okay, in the interest of time, I'll go to Mr. Beal. We'll have you begin so that we can work on the technical, and we'll have Mr. Giacomi come up next. Mr. Beal, if you don't mind, if you could begin, that'd be great.
Good morning, Chairwoman Hayes, Ranking Member Bacon, and members of the Nutrition Oversight and Department Operations Subcommittee. My name is Mike Beal, and I currently am the Chief Financial Officer of Ball's Food Stores. Ball's Food Stores currently owns and operates 26 retail grocery stores in the greater Kansas City, Kansas, and Missouri metropolitan area. We operate primarily under the Price Chopper and Hen House banners, but have other stores as well. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you here today. I'm testifying on behalf of the National Grocers Association, the trade association representing the independent grocery stores across this country. Ball's Food Stores is a locally owned, third-generation, family-owned company started by Molly and Sidney Ball in 1923. Our stores are full-service supermarkets and have accepted SNAP as a form of tender essentially since each location opened. We make a point of doing business, substantial business, with about 150 local family farmers located within 200 miles of Kansas City, and have been doing so for more than 15 years. Independent grocers create markets for smaller producers, adding to the partnerships across our communities. My purpose today is to share with you the independent grocer's perspective on the value of SNAP and the importance of continued support of this program. In 2020, SNAP was responsible for nearly 200,000 U.S. grocery industry jobs, earning wages totaling more than $6.7 billion. SNAP is a shining example of a public-private partnership that builds strong communities. SNAP not only works as it is intended, but it also features one of the lowest error rates of any federal program in existence. Independent community grocers are the key private partners with the federal government to administer SNAP, and I can attest that the program is critical to the health of local communities. If it were not for SNAP, many local grocery stores would simply not exist in areas that need them most. Numerous urban and rural areas throughout the country are home to high concentrations of SNAP participants who rely on local grocery stores to access healthy and affordable foods. In many small towns, the local independent grocer is the only store in town, provides an anchor to the community. NGA supports continued access to SNAP and expanding access to include online purchasing. While 47 states have launched SNAP online purchasing, independent retailers face significant barriers offering the program to consumers. NGA supports expanding online SNAP purchasing in all states and providing resources to develop a secure, easy-to-use online and app-based portal for EBT redemption to support smaller retailers. Establishing a system to accept online SNAP payments is a lengthy and expensive process requiring specific point-of-sale technology and website functions. Additionally, we support the creation of a USDA Technical Assistance Center to facilitate online purchasing and the use of a portal for smaller retailers, direct-to-consumer farmers, and farmers markets. We ask for the committee's support to streamline the difficult process that is hindering independent supermarkets from enabling SNAP for online grocery purchases. In addition to increasing access, NGA supports increasing nutritional incentives to use SNAP benefits to purchase a variety of foods, including fruits and vegetables. We strongly believe this is a better solution than attempting to impose restrictions on choice. The dietary habits of SNAP and non-SNAP customers have been shown to be identical by the USDA. Consequently, restricting choice will not advance important public health goals. SNAP choice restrictions would require the federal government to identify, evaluate, and track the nutritional profile of the hundreds of thousands of foods that are available in today's grocery stores. It is far better to provide incentives such as the Gus Schumacher Nutritional Incentive Program, otherwise known as GusNEP, and the Healthy Food Financing Incentive. Empowering consumers to purchase healthy fruits and vegetables is a much more successful long-term strategy to encouraging healthy eating than allowing the government to decide which food items a SNAP consumer may purchase. NGA supports reducing barriers for retailers to participate in the Nutrition Incentive Program. The main barrier that retailers often run into when trying to participate in SNAP incentives is technical challenges to developing a point-of-sale system, or a POS, that automatically triggers a discount on produce based upon the EBT payment. This issue has actually prevented many retailers from even pursuing GusNet projects. We suggest that these additional benefits be provided directly to EBT cards to simplify administration. The final issue I'd like to mention is operational fees. NGA supports the prohibition on EBT processing fees in Section 4006D and urges its extension. We believe this provision will prevent state EBT processors from imposing excessive fees and strengthen the ban on interchange fees. We hope that Section 4006D can serve as a solution to restore competition to the contracting process so that more reliable firms have a shot at state EBT processing contracts. In conclusion, we want to maintain our strong existing private-public partnership with the SNAP program and continue to serve our rural and urban customers. We hope to improve access to SNAP, including online purchasing, support customers in making healthy purchasing decisions, and reduce the administrative burden and fees on participating retailer. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss these important issues today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. We'll now go virtually to Mr. Giacomi. If you are ready, please begin.
Good morning, Chairwoman Hayes, Ranking Members Bacon and Thompson, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Dan Giacomi, and I'm the SNAP Program Administration Manager for the Connecticut Department of Social Services. I'm honored to appear before you today to offer testimony concerning this critical and successful program utilized by millions of Americans each month. In Connecticut, we currently provide SNAP assistance monthly to more than 1 in 10 residents residing in all 169 towns. Through this, we see that SNAP significantly reduces food insecurity in our state and is one of the most effective tools at our disposal to boost the food industry and broader economy quickly and efficiently, especially in times of economic downturn. We also see how SNAP improves health outcomes and supports individuals in all aspects of life by providing essential nutrition and supports to its recipients. First, we would like to commend Congress for the actions taken in the 2018 Farm Bill that gave Connecticut the tools we so critically needed to meet the unprecedented and unexpected challenges we have faced in recent years. In addition, the temporary flexibilities Congress enacted to increase SNAP benefits and adjust administrative rules early in the public health emergency meant that we could preserve access to meaningful food assistance for families while operating under the social and economic disruptions experienced early in the pandemic. We firmly believe that the actions Congress took were fundamental to SNAP being one of the true success stories of our country's pandemic response. Food insecurity in Connecticut, like many states, rose significantly as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Results from a report published in September 2021 by our partners at Connecticut Food Share showed an overall 31% increase in food insecurity 1 year into the pandemic in our state. As you look ahead to the next reauthorization of the Farm Bill, our experiences administering the SNAP program, both during the 2018-2019 government shutdown and the subsequent pandemic, have demonstrated the value and importance of program innovations, some of which I believe should be made permanent, but has also revealed additional steps that could be taken to strengthen the program in the future, making it more resilient in times of greater need and better able to include groups that have long been overlooked. Significant improvements can and should be considered in areas that would foster innovation, streamline service delivery, and simplify the administration of the program, as well as ensure its integrity and stability. While not a comprehensive list, I'll briefly touch on areas in which I believe this committee and Congress should consider during the reauthorization. First and foremost, it is critical that we preserve access to broadband categorical eligibility and the alignment of services with programs such as TANF and the National School Lunch Program, as doing so greatly simplifies access to SNAP, especially for working families, seniors, and people with disabilities. Second, we should build upon and make permanent proven demonstration projects which streamline access to SNAP for vulnerable households while simultaneously cutting down on administrative expenses and increasing timeliness of case processing. Next, we need to modify and expand the policies around access to SNAP benefits for college students and veterans with disabilities, and allow for the purchase of hot or prepared foods outside of the restaurant meals program. Allowing purchases such as the salad bar in grocery stores or the often talked about rotisserie chicken would give these individuals and all SNAP recipients the same flexibilities that other Americans depend upon. Finally, the adaptations made over the past 2 years in response to the public health emergency have helped us better understand ways we can adjust program rules to meet the needs of our customers more flexibly. Opportunities are needed to further test and evaluate innovative approaches to SNAP administrative functions, such as cross-enrollment with other means-tested programs, to provide space for states to transition out of the public health emergency, leveraging the lessons we have learned. At the same time that we focus on common sense approaches to simplifying SNAP, states are committed to maintaining program integrity as a top priority. Looking ahead, Congress can assist states in their efforts to promote program integrity by helping equip them with tools that maintain accuracy and prevent fraud in the program. For example, I urge the committee to support the USDA in advancing strategies that help states use third-party income databases to quickly identify earned income of SNAP participants, both improving program integrity and streamlining the enrollment process for households. Coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, during a time when our aging workforce continues to grow and the number of individuals leaving the workforce increases, as well as a time where the Farm Bill is up for reauthorization, we collectively are at an inflection point where we have both tremendous opportunities to modernize and streamline the SNAP program to provide more equitable and effective services while also facing significant workforce challenges and complex requirements that threaten to stymie progress. Thank you for your time and your work on this critical program.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. I now recognize Ms. Cox for 5 minutes. Please begin when you are ready.
Chairwoman Hayes, Ranking Member Bacon, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Ty Jones Cox, Vice President of Food Assistance Policy at the Center on Budget here in Washington, D.C. I will discuss 3 things today: why SNAP is so important, the need for the updated Thrifty food plan, and how Congress can strengthen SNAP as part of the next Farm Bill. SNAP is our most effective anti-hunger program. That's largely because everyone who is eligible can get benefits, and the program expands automatically to meet rising needs in tough times. SNAP provides tens of millions of low-income seniors, kids, and working adults with money to buy food in their local communities. About 92% of benefits go to households with income at or below the poverty line, and 54% go to households experiencing deep poverty. As a legal aid attorney in Virginia, I saw how SNAP was a critical piece of the patchwork of services that my clients use to feed their children when their wages just were not enough to close the gap. In addition, SNAP acts as a first responder during emergencies and natural disasters. We saw how SNAP was critical in fighting food insecurity and other hardship during the pandemic. Because of SNAP and other relief measures by Congress, food insecurity did not surge during the pandemic the way it did during the Great Recession. SNAP is associated with better short and long-term outcomes in health, education, and self-sufficiency. While SNAP is an effective tool in reducing food insecurity, the benefit amount had not kept up with the changing times. The revised Thrifty food plan raised SNAP benefits, helping households better afford a healthy diet. Average SNAP benefits went from about $4.25 per person per day to about $5.45 per person per day, which is obviously still quite modest. The Agriculture Department revised the Thrifty food plan at the specific direction of Congress in the bipartisan Farm Bill that was signed by President Trump. About 2.4 million people, including more than 1 million children, are lifted above the poverty line because of this modest increase, based on a Center on Budget estimate that uses the supplemental poverty measure and census data. That is something to celebrate, right? Previously, SNAP benefits were woefully inadequate, given the struggles of many households to buy and prepare healthy foods, and they were not aligned with the most recent dietary recommendations. This revision to the Thrifty Food Plan was needed, overdue, and one thing I think about is how many more children could have been lifted out of poverty if we had done something earlier. The Farm Bill is the time for Congress to strengthen SNAP. Although I do not consider this a comprehensive list, I want to suggest 2 areas for the committee to consider. First, SNAP does not reach all groups of eligible low-income people, and the committee could strengthen SNAP to reduce the risk of food insecurity for these groups. For example, about a half of adults over 60 participate in SNAP. Certain immigrants and college students who are experiencing food insecurity do not qualify for SNAP, and others are reluctant to participate or unaware they are qualified. SNAP's 3-month time limit on non-disabled unemployed adults excludes many unemployed or underemployed workers, including veterans. And residents of Puerto Rico, America's Samoa, and the Northern Marinara Islands are excluded from SNAP and instead receive food assistance through block grant programs that are not as responsive as SNAP. Congress should consider how to ensure that SNAP program operations and oversight keep pace with technology and innovation. Out of necessity, SNAP adopted some technological improvements during the pandemic and proved that others were viable. The Farm Bill will be an opportunity to assess where these changes can be institutionalized or expanded. Participants and agencies are used to having to make do with outdated systems, and participants are accustomed to having subpar service, and this should no longer be acceptable in our federal programs. To wrap up, I want to highlight a sobering reality that should make all of us want to do more in fighting food insecurity. In 2020, 1 in 4 Black households with children and 1 in 5 Latino households with children was food insecure. This is a crisis that has been going on for decades, even before the pandemic revealed these stark disparities. 1 in 4. It's sobering. How do we let this kind of hardship persist year after year? This is a huge disadvantage for these children, even as they're just getting started in life, and we know that it will affect their health, education, and well-being for the rest of their lives. This cannot be how we operate, and I look forward to working together that we can change this. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you to all our witnesses for your very powerful and informative testimony. At this time, members will be recognized for questions in the order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority members. You will be recognized for 5 minutes in order to allow us as much time as possible to get through questions. Please keep your microphones muted until you are recognized in order to minimize background noise. I'll now begin with the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Govern. If you're on the panel, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your questions. I'm sorry, Mr. McGovern's not here. I now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush. How about the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal? Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Lawson. You're now recognized for 5 minutes. Mr. Lawson, we can't hear you. If you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I think you can hear me now.
Yes, sir. Please begin.
Okay, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Bacon, I want to thank you all for having this meeting. One of the first things that I want to talk about is, and I guess this goes to Mr. Beal. In your testimony, Mr. Beal, you mentioned that the SNAP program kept a large number of small grocery stores in business. They might not would exist right now during this pandemic. Could you further elaborate on that? And I'm very interested in the statement that you made.
Certainly, Mr. Representative. Yes, we operate stores on both sides of the state line. We operate stores in more affluent areas. We operate stores in more demographically challenged areas. As an example of what I mean by that, we recently, actually last July, opened a brand new store. It was a replacement store that was in an area where over 25% of our total store sales are SNAP customers. And our former store was losing money in that location. It was underserving the market. And we opened a new store in what would have otherwise been considered a food desert. And the residents and all the customers around that store were so grateful. They consider it their store. We're so proud to be a part of the community. We know of another situation in Kansas City where a grocer closed the doors and couldn't get another grocer to go in. It was purchased by the landlord, who was a nonprofit agency, a predominantly black customer base, as well as administrative. Our company worked with that landlord, who now became a grocery owner, for 18 months to help them get into the business, to learn the business. But they would not have a store in that area but for the SNAP program, because so many of their customers and constituents were on SNAP benefits. And we did this because we're a community partner. We didn't charge anything for paying all their bills, for paying their payroll. It wasn't our bank account, it was their cash, but we provided all those administrative services for 18 months to help them get in the business. And I assure you that had it not been for SNAP, that store wouldn't have survived, and neither would our new store have opened up in the area that we opened the new store in last July.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Beal, there are specific ways that Congress can support these retailers and growers in the upcoming Farm Bill to make it easier for them to participate in SNAP online purchasing program. Do you have any recommendations that you could give to us for this Farm Bill?
Oh, certainly. The online SNAP process is very complicated. There's really three areas that I'd like to share with the committee that could be very helpful. First, NGA in particular would love the USDA to create a technical assistance center, and we believe that will go a long ways towards solving these three issues. But the first thing is no clear guidelines in terms of what it takes to get certified as an online SNAP grocer. There's nowhere to go. There's no central repository, no portal, anything we can go to. And so each retailer is kind of out there on their own to try and figure out how to get online certified. Second is that when you do attempt to do this, you can send a letter of intent to the USDA, and it's like sending something out into a black hole. We don't get any kind of acknowledgement that the letter of intent or the inquiry has been received. You don't hear anything back from them. It could be 6 weeks, it could be 9 weeks, it could be something longer. You don't even have any idea whether you sent it to the right party. And third, when it comes to certifying for online SNAP, the certification process is much different from what the states do with the WIC program, where the whole platform is certified. But with online SNAP, it's every single banner that an operator operates that has to get certified, even if the platform itself is the same. And the only difference is the pricing on the products and the name on the banner. And as I mentioned, we operate a number of different banners in our company, predominantly 2, but we operate 4 different banners overall. And so for us to certify, and that certification could be anywhere from 9 months to a year to get certified, but you got to go through that process with every single banner and not with the individual platform. So it's very, very cumbersome. And if the committee could address those issues, particularly with a technical assistance center, it would be much appreciated by independent grocers.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Madam Chair, my time is running out, but if I get a chance to, at the end is to talk a little bit more about students' access to SNAP. But that I yield back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lawson. I now recognize the gentleman from Nebraska, Ranking Member Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the opening comments from all 3 of our panelists today. My first questions are for Mr. Giacomi and Mrs. Cox. How can we better promote healthy foods for SNAP recipients? What are some logical, good ways we could help urge healthier eating? And I'll go to Mr. Giacomi first.
Thank you, Representative. I'm very proud in the work that we do here in our SNAP Nutrition Education Program. I would love to see further investment in that program. That program goes out and meets people where they're at, looking at their dietary needs, and provides them with nutrition education, with exercise, with meals, things of that nature that allows that. Secondly, I would say that as Mr. Beal mentioned in his testimony, healthy nutrition incentive programs are definitely a way in which we could promote healthier eating. If you incentivize individuals by saying, we will provide you with a rebate, refund, additional SNAP dollars for all fruits and vegetables, things of that nature that you purchase, I believe that in itself would promote and would allow individuals to purchase these items and further stretch out the benefits that they receive each month.
Thank you, Mr. Giacomi. Ms. Cox?
Thank you. Yeah, so SNAP enables households to afford more healthy food, right? The fact that they're able to get these benefits, the other income they have, they're able to shuffle it around and purchase the food. A couple of things. So SNAP benefits, since they're only could be purchased in grocery stores, they're actually more likely to purchase food that's more healthy, because the food in a grocery store is usually more healthy than food that is purchased outside at a restaurant. Also, as both Mr. Giacomi and Mr. Beal said, there's the fresh incentives. And so in a prior position that I had at AARP Foundation, we actually operated a pilot for older adults in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where those who had hypertension, high blood pressure, or obesity, we actually gave them a gift card to purchase at a grocery store where they could only buy fresh fruits or vegetables or frozen vegetables. And we saw real change in their A1C, their hypertension, and their high blood pressure 3 and 6 months later. So while the research doesn't show that restricting food makes people purchase more healthy food, we do see that incentives, when you're actually giving people, double up bucks or some other incentive to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables, works.
Thank you. I find it very insightful. A question for Mr. Beal. We've had some discussions in the past about what Ms. Cox referred to a little bit about restricting what foods you could buy if they're unhealthy. And there's a lot of debate. Is cranberry juice healthy and diet soda is not? And I mean, there's a lot of different debates on this. But the main thing that we hear from is from the grocery stores how hard it would be to administer a program like that. Could you give us some insights on that as well? Because I think that that's a key factor in limiting what we can really do here. Go ahead.
Thank you for offering me a chance to answer that question, because we, in our experience, we do participate in the Double Up Food Bucks program. I testified in November of 2016 regarding that, and we've been running that program now for 7 years. And to Mrs. Cox's testimony, that has resulted in better food nutrition for those beneficiaries. Before we switched POS systems, we had what's called a loyalty program, and you may be familiar with a loyalty card that many grocers offered where you can track the purchases and stuff. And we had a system that was what I would call a Cadillac or a Maserati that made it very, very easy for us to conduct the Double Up Food Bucks program. After we were forced to switch POS programs for other issues, we found out it became very challenging, because the issue is, on the Double Up Food programs, there's incentives provided for fresh produce purchasing, but the SNAP benefit is a tender type, okay? And so that transaction needs to know that it's only paying for, under the Double Up Food Bucks, fresh fruits and vegetables. And typically the tender type doesn't know anything about what's in the order, it just knows the totals. And that's the reason for having and requesting a technical assistance center through the USDA that can help grocers marry up the two, the what's in the order along with the payment. We work with a local agency, nonprofit agency by the name of Mid-America Regional Council, MARC, that administers the program, and it's very cumbersome, but we do it in our stores, all 26 stores, to help provide that benefit. We're getting ready, MARC is getting ready to write a grant similar to what Ms. Cox mentioned, where we can participate in a program where doctors will write scripts that would be funded by a gift card program through the GusNet program for SNAP customers and Medicaid customers to just purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. But that's what the challenge is that the form of payment doesn't realize what's in the order, and you need to know that to make sure that you're only paying for what you want.
Thank you very much. My time's expired.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. That was really good information. Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern. You can unmute and begin your questioning for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you for doing this hearing, and I want to thank the administration for all it has done during the public health emergency to improve access to SNAP and the important but overdue increase in benefits for the Thrifty food plan. And I want to start by reminding everyone that COVID showed us just how easily people can fall from stability into instability. And while our world continues to be unpredictable, it's essential that people know that there is support for them when times get hard. So yesterday, I had a meeting with Dawn Pierce, who's from Idaho. She's going to be speaking at one of the upcoming listening sessions for the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. But a few years back, she was working as a hospice nurse. And despite being someone who was taking care of other people's loved ones, she found herself in a place where she couldn't financially take care of her own loved ones. And she told me her story. And the thing that stuck out to me the most was that she was ridiculed multiple times at the grocery store when she was buying food for her family using her EBT card. In fact, she was told that, quote, she didn't look like someone who was on food stamps. And the reality is that that the stigma starts with the rhetoric that comes out of this place, out of the Capitol. The stereotypes about people using SNAP are harmful and simply not true. And I know these stereotypes are advanced because there are some who are trying to push an agenda to try to diminish the program or cut the program. The fact of the matter is that 3/4 of SNAP households with at least one working age non-disabled adult work while receiving SNAP. And we know that the harsh time limit for SNAP of 3 months of enrollment without a job does not increase employment. It throws people off of benefits and increases hunger. And yet there are people who still are holding on to that as something that we need to enshrine. The bottom line is that people who aren't working on, and who are on SNAP are often children, seniors, and disabled adults. And most participants who can work do so. So, I really get frustrated when people spend their time trying to make it harder for people to access SNAP, as if everybody's dream is to be financially insecure enough to be on SNAP. Access to SNAP helps people move their lives forward faster. And so we need to start treating people with dignity, and how we draft and pass the next farm bill, starting here in this room, can send one of two messages: that we either care about people and we understand the importance of SNAP for people who are experiencing hard times, or we do not. And I'll just also say that many of the waivers put in place during the COVID-19 emergency just made life easier for people. And it will be a missed opportunity on our part if we do not reauthorize them before they expire. So let me end by saying that if seeing your constituents and Americans across this country waiting in lines at food banks during COVID doesn't move us all to do something more and appreciate the importance of programs like SNAP, I'm not sure anything will. And let me be clear, I will not support any farm bill that guts the nutrition safety net for millions of Americans. I'm not going to support passing legislation that increases hunger in this country. We have an opportunity to have a more thoughtful discussion in the aftermath of COVID. Again, I want to thank the administration for their leadership and their sensitivity during this difficult time. SNAP is an important program that deserves our support. And by the way, it also helps our farmers. There's an economic stimulus to this benefit as well. So I just want to go on record as saying as we look at the next farm bill, we need to find ways to strengthen the program, and we need to learn from its successes in the recent months. And again, Madam Chair, thank you for your leadership on this, and I look forward to working with you as we move forward on the next farm bill.
Are you yielding back? You still have time, Mr. McGovern.
Well, I mean, again, the only other thing I would say is that, it's important for us to talk to people with lived experiences, because oftentimes, we say things in this committee or on the House floor that maybe make a good soundbite in some circles, but do not reflect the reality of what people are experiencing in this country. So, I've been talking to a lot of people with lived experiences, and SNAP has been a lifeline for them and their families. So, again, this needs to be an important part of the Farm Bill, one in which we strengthen the program and not try to punish people or try to diminish people who need the benefit. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Thank you for your partnership. Now your time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania. Mr. Thompson, you're recognized for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Bill, when trying to, getting into the weeds, which is what we need to do with this Farm Bill, is preparing for the next one. And thank you all for your kind comments about the 2018 Farm Bill. I was the Nutrition Subcommittee Chair during that process. It's near and dear to my heart as a young couple, my wife and I, not under the agriculture jurisdiction, but education and labor. We were on the WIC program, starting out as a young couple when we were expecting our first child. So I appreciate these programs. I want to make sure they're done right. I want to make sure that they are pathways to meeting the immediate nutritional needs of these families who find themselves usually temporarily in financial distress. And the question is, how do we help them also move out of financial distress? But my question is more of a technical question for you, just to check in. Section 4006 of the 2018 Farm Bill was drafted. When that was done, policymakers were very clear it was temporary. It basically was a moratorium on the processing fees because that had gotten to be a problem for our vendors, our independent grocers, our large grocery stores, our convenience stores. And so we basically did a 5-year prohibition, but we also asked that while providing interim certainty, that kind of an expectation that stakeholders would all come to the table to coordinate and find practical compromise as for this next Farm Bill, which, as we all know, so we have basically just under 1/3 of this Farm Bill is left. 19 months from now, it expires. We need to be prepared to reauthorize. Best to your knowledge, can you tell me about how that's been complied with? Have stakeholders, what has been the effort to stakeholders to come together to kind of coordinate and find practical compromise with the processors on these fees? So we have some suggested recommendations and solutions going into the next Farm Bill.
Thank you for your question, sir. I can only speak from personal experience, but I will tell you of a recent experience that I had that kind of demonstrates what the quandary is. And, I'm not a member of the board of NGA or FMI, which is the Food Marketing Institute.
Right.
But I do know that our wholesaler, Associated Wholesale Grocers out of Kansas City, it's a significant independent co-op. They held a roundtable discussion about 3 weeks ago Friday, maybe 4. Senator Marshall was there. And it was a discussion concerning EBT and electronic fees. You might be impressed with some of the parties that were there, but representatives from Kroger, from Walmart, many independent grocers, many state association convenience stores were there, and there were places for members of the banking community to be there. MasterCard and Visa did not send anybody to sit down and talk about that, about the issues facing us. I do know that most grocers make on average, if they're lucky, 1%. I'm not talking about the big public companies.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that our credit card fees and debit fees, which debit is much preferred, was more than 1.12% of our business, and we don't get 100% of our tenders paid with credit card fees. But every time that there's a class action settlement with the industry, and it's happened at least 3 times over the last 24 years I've been back in the grocery business, the rates just go up, that the retailers get charged to pay for their fees. And I do know we've had a number of discussions amongst committees, other grocers, about how the argument that there's so much fraud and stuff that's out there that they have to pay for with their fees can be easily simplified and totally abolished with the use of a PIN with credit card like they do in majority of Europe. And so the technology is out there. It's the same credit card companies, Visa and MasterCard, but there has, to my knowledge, been no discussion jointly with the banking industry and Visa and MasterCard to try and reduce the fees and rein them in. And we have the highest fees, credit card electronic payment fees of any country in the world that I'm aware of. And many countries have done something about it. So we would welcome the opportunity.
Well, I appreciate the effort that was made, very much so. And I'm disappointed in the stakeholders, as you had mentioned, that failed to show. That this was, the expectation that was set forth in the Farm Bill was for all the key stakeholders, not just the folks in the grocery business, the retail business, but quite frankly, also the processors. And, we would really, I would encourage them. We've got a little shy of 1/3 of the term of this Farm Bill has to go yet, left to go, I guess, before this one expires. And my expectation is the processors would come to the table and join you all to have whether you are able to come to some agreement or some, reasonable agreement. That's left to be seen, but there's no excuse not to be at the table for the discussion.
Can I clarify one thing?
Please.
Just for the sake of factual. Anytime you're working with electronic payments, there is a processor which really just takes all the payments from the retailer and sends them off to basically MasterCard, Visa,
Right.
and Discover. So it's not really the processors who charge a fixed fee per transaction, and it's well less than a penny in most cases, at least in our industry. It's Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex the most expensive, that actually charge the fees that we get hit with. And the chargebacks that we're still getting hit with, even though they've come up with security on the EMV cards, still exist to this day, regardless of what they say. We would welcome that opportunity, but it's going to take a push from members of Congress and from the committees to make that happen, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ranking Member Thompson. I now recognize the gentleman from California. I remind members to keep their comments to 5 minutes. We extend some grace to our ranking member because he is our ranking member. Thank you. Mr. Carbajal, please unmute and begin.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman, and thank you to the witnesses here today testifying. SNAP is critical to ensuring millions of Americans do not go hungry. When SNAP recipients use their benefits, Congress should not be overly scrutinizing every single purchase. We should let families make decisions, as other families, that are best for them. I certainly share the goal of many of my colleagues interested in promoting healthier eating by SNAP recipients and making sure that, like the rest of America, they get as much education as possible. But a few of my colleagues are doing more to regulate the ability of a SNAP recipient to buy a bag of chips than they are to ensure that someone purchasing an AR-15 is not a danger to others or themselves and or qualified to own such a gun. We also don't see near this level of scrutiny when the United States government provides oil companies with subsidies. Sure, they could spend those subsidies however they want. We know that the USDA has proven that dietary habits of SNAP participants and non-participants are very similar. We know that participation in SNAP is linked with improved nutritional outcomes compared to non-participants at similar income levels. We also know that SNAP is a successful public-private partnership, and for every dollar the government spends on SNAP, up to $1.50 is returned to the economy. There is a positive return to the economy from this very important program, and there is no evidence that SNAP purchases are contributing to poor health outcomes. Mr. Beal, can you elaborate on what benefits you see consumers and businesses receiving from a system that incentivizes healthy food choices instead of limiting what food SNAP recipients can purchase?
I'm not exactly certain what you're asking, but I can tell you from our participation with the Double Up Food Bucks program, and not only do we work with MARC, the local agency, but the University of Kansas Medical Center, and they've actually done studies on improved health outcomes, similar to what Ms. Cox mentioned with regard to the prescription program. I also can tell you that when I have worked with the state of Kansas and Missouri, particularly Kansas, when they were considering a sugar tax, on products that are being sold in stores that it's very similar to the situation where we talk about restriction of certain food choices, where the industry, the retailers, the people that have to abide by these rules and regulations would be left in a quandary and a great deal of uncertainty as to what items would qualify if we started going down that road to choice. One person's version of what's healthy compared to somebody else, and we could get nutritionists who would generally agree but necessarily not agree on everything, would be a bureaucratic nightmare for the USDA, but also for all the grocers that are asked to enforce the program and honor the program. And I would expect that there would be compliance issues and inspections like there is today. And so not knowing what the specifics would be of what items would qualify or not, but to allow customers the choice. My personal view is, not NGA's, that incentives like what we're talking about with the double up food bucks and with the prescription program, where we can actually focus on people's health outcomes and healthier eating, is a very, very strong way to go and would maximize the opportunities for people to improve health outcomes as well. Don't know if I answered your question.
Thank you. You did very good for not understanding my question completely. So you did great. Thank you. Ms. Cox, in your testimony, you mentioned how food insecurity can cause long-term harm to children and families. Can you speak more to how hunger can impact life outcomes and conversely, the benefits of SNAP on educational achievement and health outcomes?
Sure, thanks for the question. So we know that food insecurity impacts a child's ability to learn, pay attention in school, and grow. And so research has shown that children participating in SNAP, they face lower risk of nutritional deficiencies and poor health, which can improve their health over their lifetime. Also, SNAP helps children succeed in school, right? We understand that when children are hungry, they're not able to pay attention, and they're also having behavioral issues. There was a study that found that test scores among students in SNAP households are highest for those receiving benefits 2 or 3 weeks before the test. So that suggests that SNAP can help students learn and prepare for tests, and that when benefits run out and families are struggling to afford groceries, children's ability to learn is diminished. To the last piece of just kind of the importance of SNAP for children overall, we're just, when children are fed, they're able to learn, they're able to pay attention, and they're able to grow. And I think that SNAP is an investment in our long-term outcomes for our children and the health of our country.
Thank you very much. I'm out of time. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Right in the middle of a sip of water. Thank you so much, Mr. Carbajal. I now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Desjardins. If you are on the platform, can you unmute and begin your questions?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to participate, and I thank the witnesses for participating in what is a very timely hearing, considering the pending global food shortage, the record inflation, the price and cost of groceries. People are struggling all across the country. And, we want to make sure going into next year with this farm bill that we have all the information and data we need to make sure that this program is stable and that we can provide to the people who really need it. And Mr. Giacomi, I wanted to ask you a few questions as we prepare for this monumental task in the upcoming year. During the early days of the pandemic, your Connecticut Department of Social Services experienced a high of nearly 4,700 applicants arriving weekly, which was a 330% increase from the number of applications received weekly prior to the start of the pandemic. And now you're still receiving over 3,000 applications per week, which is up 176%. So I struggle a little bit with these numbers. One, I want to talk a little bit about work requirements. But two, businesses all across the country, certainly not just across Tennessee's 4th District, are struggling with labor shortages. And it's estimated from the U.S. Chambers that we have 11.4 million job openings right now and up to 6 million unemployment workers. So it looks like there's about 2 jobs for every workers that are out there looking for jobs. So what are you finding in terms in Connecticut of people trying to find work that can't? Are you keeping any data on this? And are there any current requirements that people are seeking work?
Thank you, Representative. The Department of Social Services does not track employment data to that extent. What we do track is we do have a very robust employment and training program in regards to SNAP, which allows SNAP recipients not receiving TANF to have training in all sorts of industries, especially those that are most in need right now, when you look at manufacturing, healthcare, et cetera. What we're seeing is individuals are still participating very robustly. They're attending our community college programs, our community-based organizations. They're able to come out with these degrees or certificates, and they're able to find employment, which then essentially, or hopefully, the intent is to allow them to be in a position to support themselves and no longer need assistance. So
okay,
we are
yeah,
still seeing
that sounds good, but it doesn't reconcile with those numbers. The numbers that you're still seeing that are applying in this program that you say is effective doesn't seem to be working based on those numbers. Again, try to help us here as we write this farm bill. Why do you suggest the necessity of broad-based categorical eligibility is so important when others consider it to be a loophole where people that are maybe wealthy or not necessarily qualified for SNAP continue to get benefits?
So I'll say with broadband categorical eligibility, it's not an automatic funnel into the program itself. While it allows us to give individuals, especially those in working families, the opportunity to apply and not necessarily be automatically rejected because of their gross income, they still do have to meet a net income test of a 100% of the FPL before they're able to receive assistance. So those individuals that perhaps are wealthy or otherwise that are able to apply and perhaps get in the door under our 185% FPL still have to show us that their need is there and they meet this net income test prior to us providing them any benefits.
Do you track it all? I mean, with the influx of illegal immigration across the southern border, I mean, there's record numbers, and this is going to obviously cause a drain on the SNAP program. Are you tracking that at all?
We do have numbers on those that are applying. I will say that if an adult comes in and is not identified as a permanent resident or in a qualifying category, they would not be eligible for assistance. So we're not necessarily tracking the number of individuals that are coming in that we're denying because of this reason.
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt because my time is short. That's a talking point that I see. You can Google how many non-U.S. citizens receive SNAP, and it says it's very difficult to get it, but that's not actually true because if you're a child under 18, or if you say you're seeking asylum, which pretty much everybody is right now, it's refugee status or asylum seeking. So all these people do qualify for the SNAP program, and for some reason we just want to ignore that. There's going to be a global food shortage. Americans are hungry, and we need to worry about taking care of Americans first. And my time has expired, but I thank you for your participation.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I may respond really quickly to clarify my statement.
We'll get back to you on that,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
Please, I'll give you time. Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I'll just add something for the record. Only U.S. citizens and certain lawfully present non-citizens may receive SNAP benefits. Non-citizens who are eligible based on their immigration status must also meet other SNAP eligibility requirements, such as income and resource limits. Some specific, very specific non-citizen groups are eligible without a waiting period, and they include refugees, asylees, victims of trafficking, Iraq and Afghan immigrants who worked as translators, interpreters, or were employed by the U.S. government and received special immigrant visas. Other non-citizens can be considered after a waiting period if they are a legal permanent resident and has worked for 10 years or of another qualifying status for 5 years. So the idea that undocumented immigrants who are coming over the border automatically qualify for benefits like SNAP is just not true.
Well, Madam
I
Chair,
now
with all due
recognize
respect,
the
if you're gonna rebut
gentlewoman
my
from
comment,
New
Madam
Hampshire,
Chair.
Representative Custer. You have 5 minutes. You can unmute yourself and begin your questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that important clarification. And I think that's an example of what Representative McGovern was talking about with the stigma and the inaccurate information that's been spread about people who need assistance to keep their children fed. I appreciate this hearing, and I know this is not directly germane to SNAP, but I do want to mention, particularly after the last exchange, that food security programs are interwoven, and I cannot let this opportunity pass without commenting on the approaching cliff that students are facing when the school meal pandemic waiver expires at the end of this month. Let's remember, and we've heard testimony today to this effect, children cannot learn when they are hungry. And I strongly believe that universal free school meals are a sensible investment in our young people and in the future of this country and our economy. Even if we don't pursue universal meals now, and by the way, for the record, I believe we should, letting these waivers expire will have a painful and abrupt impact upon students and their families, as well as creating an administrative nightmare for our schools. It does not need to happen this way. We have been at the ready to advance a reasonable extension in the House, and I hope that the Senate will get on board before we reach that cliff in just a few weeks. Now, having said that, let me turn back to SNAP and how we can use the 2023 Farm Bill to continue to strengthen this critical lifeline for American families. As I mentioned at our hearing earlier this spring with Undersecretary Dean, I believe that the SNAP program administrative flexibilities granted since 2020 have made an incredible difference in mitigating hunger throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. I've introduced legislation to make permanent the telephonic signature flexibility, which allows states to process SNAP applications without expensive technology and saves applicants from having to make the trip to a state office just to fill out paperwork. Mr. Giacomi mentioned several of these COVID relief flexibilities in his testimony, including telephonic signatures. So, Mr. Giacomi, let me turn to you. Could you elaborate on the impact that the flexibilities have had on the ground, both for your department's administrative work and how families have been helped in securing benefits that they so desperately needed during COVID?
Certainly, and thank you for the question. The flexibilities that we received throughout the public health emergency have been pivotal to our success in our ability to be able to serve the residents of Connecticut for the past 2 years. It was in March of 2020 that quite suddenly our offices closed for a period of time due to a shutdown here in Connecticut, and we had to pivot to a new way of serving individuals that perhaps we had been unable to do prior or were not experienced in doing. So things such as that telephonic signature that you mentioned allowed us to have these individuals call us on the telephone, not be burdened to come into the office to find a closed door, not to try and have to go to the library or other institution that has internet access or things of that nature in order to receive assistance. They were able to call us up on the telephone. It also helped us to reduce churn or the period of time that an individual is receiving and then perhaps is closed and goes back onto assistance. We were able to utilize some reports that we had of individuals that were in danger of closing at the end of the month, get on the telephone, call those individuals and say, hey, listen, we have this opportunity for you to be able to renew your benefits directly from the telephone if you're willing to take it, and keep those individuals for receiving benefits and not having to worry about taking time off of work to come into the office or to complete a form or things of that nature. So I think that flexibility, along with the others that were provided to us throughout the pandemic, as I said, were monumental and were definitely necessary in order for us to be able to do the work that we do.
Thank you. Shifting gears, I want to cover how we continue to strengthen SNAP in rural areas. And I think it's worth re-emphasizing that SNAP not only helps rural patrons, but helps rural grocers remain economically viable. Mr. Beal, can you share briefly more from the retailer's perspective about how SNAP supports both stores and recipients in rural communities?
Thank you for the opportunity. We do operate, even though we operate stores, 26 stores in the greater Kansas City metro area, we have 2 stores that are in outlying areas. One that's in Harrisonville, Missouri, and it's a county seat. It's more rural. And I would say that most Americans underappreciate how many SNAP recipients live in rural America. I think there's a general perception that it's all in the big cities. which there is a fair percentage of SNAP recipients, but I would say not having enough money is to afford groceries is an equal opportunity situation that isn't limited to the urban areas of town. And we see it in terms of...
I'm sorry, Mr. Beal, the gentlelady's time has expired. We can have you
Thank
submit
you.
the rest
I
of that
yield
answer.
back.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Custer. I now recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Beard, for your questioning. You have 5 minutes. Please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member, for holding this session about the SNAP program. And it's always insightful to me to hear from witnesses that are actually involved in the process. And I think that's important for us to make decisions on this committee about the next Farm Bill. So I'm going to start. Mr. Beal, you mentioned, and I took down 3 things that were concerning to you. One of those being that there's no clear guidelines. The second was no response. Many times you don't get a response back. But the third one you mentioned, it said certifying online banners, and there may be more than one banner, and that may, in my mind, was a barrier to try and make a smooth process for getting folks moving. So could you elaborate on that, on the banners, please?
Certainly, sir. What I mean by banner is a trade name. So I mentioned that we operate hen house stores and price chopper stores. Those are considered different banners, and under the online SNAP program, you have to certify each of the banners, even though the underlying technology, I'm a lead investor in a medical technology company, the platform itself is the platform that needs to be certified. When it comes to WIC situations, it's the platform that's certified, but with the online SNAP, it's the actual banner that needs to be certified. So you have to go through the same process of certification, even though there's different name on the stores you operate.
So continuing in that vein, what do you see would be helpful to make that more efficient?
To come up with a situation or requirements that is similar to WIC, where you get the platform certified, and once the underlying technology is certified as being secure, efficient for the retailer, that after that, once the platform has been certified, that you don't have to recertify just because you operate different trade names on the retail stores.
Thank you. I want to change just a little bit, but I do want to ask you, in terms of helping individuals make healthy choices for their diet, I think that's important. So what do you think is an effective way for consumers to make those kind of decisions while they're in the grocery store? And then what can we do to stimulate them to stick to that kind of decision making to their benefit long term? So if you got any thoughts there.
Yes, and thank you for inquiring. As previously discussed, I think it's a general consensus that anytime you cook at home and you make your meals from fresh foods, that you're going to have healthier food outcomes than you would eating from fast food or from restaurants and stuff. So any type of program incentive that could be a part of the SNAP program, like the GusNet program is today, that would encourage the eating of fresh fruits and vegetables. We hear nutritionists tell us, and we firmly believe that, if you shop the outside, the perimeter of the store, you get in all the perishable departments, and that's where the healthier choices are for consumers. And so any types of incentives along the lines of the GusNet program are very, very highly recommended by us.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn to maybe all the witnesses with this question. Sometimes, good intentions, I'm talking about government programs, the good intentions don't really end up helping the people that we'd like to help in a manner that we'd like to help. And so what can we do, because we're coming down with this Farm Bill, what do you think we can do to improve our models and our modes of delivery that really makes this program more efficient? Mr. Beal, start with you.
I would say one thing in particular is to reduce any future administrative, regulatory, and financial burdens for the administration of the program. like what we were talking about with the interchange fees, electronic fees, would be a start. Not allowing restrictions on the SNAP program because, as I mentioned earlier, you being the members of the committee and the USDA would be forced to make choices between winners and losers on the food products that are in the store. And we have over 100,000 SKUs, or what you'd call UPCs, in our database that some of our stores carry. And there are over 600,000 items, potential items, food items, and new items, over 20,000 a year coming out, and you'd be forced to do that. So I would strongly encourage we stay away from that and go towards an incentive program where there's encouragement for the healthier eating.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I've run out of time, and so I don't have time to get to the other two witnesses, but sometime I'd be interested in your thoughts. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. I now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush. You have 5 minutes for questioning. Please unmute and begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this outstanding hearing, very informative. And I want to thank all of our witnesses for appearing before us today. Madam Chair, SNAP, as you know, is a necessary program, and my constituents certainly agree. And it is vital that we strengthen this program and build upon its successes in the next year's Farm Bill. And one of the ways that I believe that we can strengthen the bill is by eliminating the asinine, the pointless, and the extremely harmful restrictions that currently exist, prohibiting SNAP recipients from spending some of their SNAP funds on hot and prepared food. Madam Chair, that is nothing but gross discrimination and biases built into this aspect of what is really a wonderful program. As we have heard from witnesses today, we already make SNAP recipients jump through far too many hoops in order to receive these benefits. It is beyond ridiculous, Madam Chair, that we prohibit them from buying hot food, but allow them to purchase the same food if it was at a lower temperature. How insulting can we be? And that's why, Madam Chair, I was proud to partner with Representative Grace Ming and Brian Fitzpatrick earlier this year to introduce the SNAP Plus Act, which will fix this bizarre loophole in our social safety network. Mr. Giacomi, I was happy that you and your written statement, that you supported lifting the restrictions on the purchase of hot and prepared food. Drill down and tell the committee, the subcommittee, about the benefits that lifting those horrendous, unnecessary, very discriminatory restrictions would have to SNAP beneficiaries.
Certainly. Thank you, Representative Rush. American shopping and eating habits have evolved. SNAP families need convenience and faster meal preparation. As a father of two young children, I should say, I know what it's like to have to juggle between sports and other activities after school, and then also worrying about preparing a meal to make sure that my kids have something healthy and nutritious to eat. I know that I have the flexibility to be able to go to the store and get that rotisserie chicken that we've talked about, or pick up a salad for myself and my household. I believe all Americans should have that same choice. I don't think that this rule as it's written now considers whether or not the food will even be consumed on the premises or taken home to eat. I think that this rule in itself is most harmful to our homeless population, as well as those recovering from a natural disaster, be it in their town or their home, and cannot cook their food and need more choice. So as I said, I think that it's a common sense approach to looking at the flexibilities that Americans have, looking at the purchasing power of SNAP and things of that nature, and adjusting to be in tune with the current situation that we see as Americans here.
Would this provision that we are advocating, would that result in any financial or monetary increases for the American taxpayer?
Not from my perspective. Perhaps Mr. Beal, coming from the Grocers Association, may have a different perspective there.
Madam Chair, I see where I'm running out of time, and so I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Representative Rush. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kamak. If you're ready, please unmute and begin your questions.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Cox, I'm just going to jump right into questions because I know that we're kind of bouncing back and forth, but I'll start with Ms. Cox. Your testimony lauds the administration for their update to the Thrifty food plan and mentions how the update will raise consumption of more nutritious foods. Beyond the simulation supported by CBPP, can you walk me through the library of research that supports this claim? Are we missing an opportunity to study actual health outcomes rather than measuring consumption?
So there's still more research to be done, right? But the research that has been done is that the purchase of healthier foods like leafy greens, lean proteins, as well as prepared items saves families time, and it's also saving money. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics supported the Thrifty food plan and update because it also gives families better access to healthier food. So just a quick reminder that it just went into place in October of 2021, so we still have time and there's research to be done to show the actual improvement in how much the Thrifty food plan will benefit families.
Well, and I think we can all agree that saving time and money isn't always the more nutritious option. Convenience sometimes comes at a cost, oftentimes, a lot of times comes at a cost, and sometimes that's in the form of less healthier food. I'll open this up to all of our witnesses. You know, generally I'm concerned that SNAP promotes a perverse business of poverty. As someone who about a decade ago was homeless and my family has faced food insecurity, I can speak to the fact that a lot of the programs seem to miss the mark and seem to perpetuate more of handout than hand up type mentalities. So you see organizations across the country that have come to expect continued or increased need in order to remain solvent instead of working themselves out of a job. They tend to just grow. So particularly in terms of federal dollars and getting more federal dollars, how are we engaging non-traditional partners in the delivery of services? And how do we rely more on the private sector, which has more of a proven ability to deliver efficiency and results with minimal red tape? And we can start with you, Ms. Cox, and work our way through the witnesses here today.
No problem. So to get to one particular point you made about working ourselves or organizations not working themselves out of business because of poverty. So SNAP covers 41 million people, and that shows because there is immense need in this country, right? We're still coming out of a pandemic, so there has to be an ability for this country to catch those people when they're struggling, and that's what the programs do. The fact that there's continued need doesn't mean that the programs aren't working. They're actually working as intended because SNAP actually expands when there's need and it contracts when the need lessens. So when need is less, SNAP will also, the amount of SNAP participants will also reduce, and we've seen that before. That, you want me to yield some time to another?
Yeah, I see
Okay.
Dan kind of chomping at the bit here, so I appreciate that, Ms. Cox. I appreciate you yielding.
Thanks, Representative. I'll say this. Per member per meal in a month is around $5 or so for SNAP participants. To me, in my opinion, that is extremely low, especially when we look at the price of foods nowadays, as well as other areas of inflation. What I will say is that I think states are in the best position to identify the need, whether it be of their workforce, whether it be of the state administrators, et cetera, and identify what work model works best for them. So in my opinion, if you're asking me, I think allowing states to be able to look at their workforce, see what works best, and respond in kind would be the way to go about things.
Excellent. Any remaining?
Mike Beal, is it okay?
There we go.
In response to your question, I would second that testimony, and from a grocer's perspective, I do believe that the administrative burden currently to grocers because of the SNAP program is about as painless as it gets, with the exception of the online. It is very, very efficient for stores to take and perform the SNAP with as little red tape as possible currently.
Thank you. My time has expired. I appreciate it. Thank you. And with that, I yield back, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Ms. Kamak. I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Panetta. You have 5 minutes. When you're ready, you can begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. And thank you to the witnesses for being here discussing a very important topic as well, first of all, as we know, but as the country saw and experienced throughout the pandemic, and that's obviously access to our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Obviously, we have the Farm Bill coming up in 2023, and I do hope to be a part of this committee in which I can continue to ensure that obviously SNAP not just plays a majority role in the Farm Bill, but that it grows and expands. And I think we have some good evidence based on what we saw during the pandemic as to how important and how vital and how crucial the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is. But we also want to make it more and more accessible. So what I would ask you is, and either of you can answer this question, is what is my opening argument for when I talk about SNAP when it comes to the Farm Bill? Obviously, I think we understand the basics, but what opportunities are there? How can we improve participation to make sure that those who are eligible are actually connected to this very, very important benefit?
I'll start. I think your opening argument would be that SNAP, as it is, the structure itself, we need to maintain it, right? We saw how important and quickly it was able to respond during the recession, and thanks to the great efforts of Congress to add additional boost. It was quick, and people spend their money right in their community. So first, we want to keep the structure. Second, when we talk about access, a piece of it is looking at those people who are not eligible or who think they're not eligible or don't know that they're eligible, like we mentioned some college students, we're talking about some veterans, and then another key piece for the center is the 3-month time limit for unemployed adults without children in their home. This is just a harsh time limit, and there's no research that shows taking away from food from people is going to make them be able to work. We have to remember that those the people who we're talking about on SNAP are usually low-wage workers. They're the ones that are in hospitality, our frontline workers in grocery stores, and those were the places that were hardest hit, so they're the ones that are having the hardest time to work. right? Finding work. As a legal aid attorney, I had clients who worked and they still were eligible for SNAP. So I think it's about making sure to protect the structure, and those who are eligible are able to get on, and we look at those who are eligible and don't know and make sure that they know that they're eligible. So I'll yield some of my time to my fellow witnesses.
Sure. Mr. Beal?
Yes, thank you for your question. As a retailer, we're just part of the delivery mechanism, right? Don't have anything to do with eligibility qualification. But here's what I do know. Food is a very basic human need. We all know that, right? And I will tell you what we see anecdotally. When people don't have the money to buy food, we know what happens. They're still going to find a way to get food. And what we see when they can't afford the food, we see it in our stores today increasing because of inflation, the price of gas, housing, and everything else, is that we see our theft go up, which is what we call shrink, okay? And people have to solve that need for the very basic of all human needs, right? And so that's what we see in our stores going up and increasing, and we also discuss that with other retailers in our share groups, and we're very concerned about that. So that's just an anecdotal piece of evidence.
Understood. Thank you. Going back to, you talked about college, and obviously as a supporter, original co-sponsor of the EATS Act, I think we can do better to level the playing field, especially when it comes with our college students. Can you go into some of the college student SNAP rules and how difficult they can be and how we can streamline them?
Sure. So currently, anyone who attends college more than part-time is ineligible for SNAP unless they're taking care of a child that's 6 years and older, working at least 20 hours, maybe participates in work study or a part of another kind of employment and training program. So it's really strict exemptions. And I think that this rule was made at a time when, you know, the idea of a traditional college student isn't what we really see now. And so it is a time to think about who are our traditional college students now, and, you know, maybe, think about ways that we can make sure that those who are really in need are still able to access benefits in college so they can finish.
Great, great. My time is up. I just want to thank both of you, not just for your service, but providing me evidence in which I hope to use next year, especially with the 2023 Farm Bill and securing our Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Thanks to both of you. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Panetta. Seeing no minority members on the platform, I now recognize the gentleman from the Northern Mariana Islands, Mr. Sablan. You're recognized. Please unmute and begin your questions.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you very much for holding today's hearing on this very important topic. I'm just gonna, Mr. Giacomi, I will again thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. But Mr. Giacomi, SNAP employment and training programs help SNAP participants gain skills, training, or work experience to increase their ability to obtain regular employment that leads to economic sufficiency, at least enough so they don't need help with nutrition assistance. But these federally funded state-administered programs also help reduce barriers to work by providing individuals with support services such as transportation, childcare, as they prepare for and obtain employment. And as mentioned by Mrs. Cox, funding for these programs is not available to communities like the Northern Mariana Islands, which are not included in SNAP and instead receive block grants. So how important is it to Connecticut is the employment and training program connected to SNAP?
Thank you, Representative. It's extremely important. It is one of our top tier pillars in Connecticut for the SNAP program, is to be able to offer SNAP employment and training. You'll see, if you happen to get a chance to read my written testimony, 2 very valuable success stories of our SNAP employment and training program. We're very proud in the work we do. We're very proud to be able to partner with all of our community colleges here in the state, as well as community-based organizations. And we see the fruits of our labor. And we feel that through employment and training, it is one of those tangible pieces of the SNAP program and the supports that SNAP provides outside of just the nutrition that allows individuals to become self-sufficient, to have the training, obtain a job, and be able to support themselves and their families going forward.
All right, thank you. And let me now, Mrs. Cox, Mr. Giacomi just told us the importance of these education training programs are to Connecticut and how successful it's been to beneficiaries of SNAP. How have you also seen similar situations or results in the several states where SNAP, of course, is available?
Yeah, great, and thank you for that question. We have seen a lot of success stories. Specifically, Washington State has a really amazing ENT program where they are able to, kind of provide wraparound services where people are getting the necessary training, and they're actually trained and placed into positions that, in a field that they'll be able to keep work. So there's apprenticeship, there's subsidized employment with certain industries. So I would love to give you more information specifically on Washington State. And I also believe I've read about the state of Louisiana also has a pretty comprehensive and successful ENT program. So happy to give you more information on that.
Thank you. And it is very important to provide this skill training, this education opportunities to those, especially in the United States, especially to those, who live in the poorest part of the country, like the Northern Marianas, American Samoa, and Puerto Rico. And so looking at the 2023 Farm Bill, it is my hope that we could include language that would allow the inclusion of education and training programs to those receiving block grants. Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you for today's hearing, and I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Sublon. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Brown. You have 5 minutes. Please unmute and begin your questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you to our expert panel for being here today. Your perspectives are helpful as we look ahead to the next Farm Bill. The SNAP program is proven to be an anti-poverty program that has shown time and time again to be effective and efficient. The SNAP program feels very close to home as almost 1 in 4 people in my district receives monthly SNAP benefits. It is important that as we look ahead to the next Farm Bill, we are thinking about how to improve the SNAP program so that it works for each participant, no matter if you are a senior, a veteran, a family with young children, disabled, or simply have fallen on hard times. So Ms. Cox, you mentioned in your testimony how quickly the SNAP program was able to adapt during the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you attribute that to? And what are some of the ways to streamline and modernize the SNAP program as we are thinking about the next Farm Bill?
Thank you for that question. So the reason it was able to respond so quickly is it's because of its structure, right? Literally its ability to expand and contract. So it's based on need. When there's more people who have need, more people are able to get SNAP, and then they're quickly able to spend their those SNAP benefits in their local communities. So that's one. And your second question was about how we could strengthen it. And I think there's a couple of pieces when we think about how to strengthen it going forward. One is when people come in, they're usually eligible or connected to other benefits. So if we start to think about how do we use data better, right? We know these individuals, they're showing up. How do we share data across programs to make sure people get on, as well as something that Mr. Bill brought up about the online purchasing. So once you're on, we're getting you on, we're sharing data, we're using telephonic signature, a lot of new things that we learned during the pandemic. How do we make sure that people are able to access their benefits? So those in rural communities, those who aren't able to get to the grocery store, if they are better able to use online purchasing pilots, that would be another strategy I would suggest. And then the last one, also around access, in addition to connecting people based on data, is also really taking a look at some of the categories of people who either think they aren't eligible, like we talked about, or those who really aren't eligible, and seeing if there's an opportunity to rethink our rules, like the rule around college students and also the time limit.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bill, from the grocer's perspective, can you share what are some of the ways to streamline and modernize the SNAP program as we're thinking about the next Farm Bill?
Thank you for your question. I've already shared the comment about creating a technical assistance center as a part of the USDA to help retailers get online. But also the GusNIP incentive programs, which I think have a lot to do with encouraging greater nutritional eating habits. The Technical Assistance Center would go a very long way towards helping find solutions for grocers right now that are forced to navigate individually on their own. Those are two really, really big issues. But I would also note from experience from working in the Double Up Food Bucks program that despite what the common notion may be, there are many other people out there that would be that are eligible and would qualify for SNAP benefits who aren't even aware of that. And so the communication piece, we've learned that it's dependent upon a lot of nonprofit agencies for these individuals to find out. And oftentimes there's stigmas associated with it that they choose not to participate in the program. And so that's a challenge. I'm not sure how to solve that challenge, but with better communication. But this Technical Assistance Center would go a long ways towards helping create incentives to get healthier eating too.
Thank you so much. One of the most important provisions in the last Farm Bill was the reevaluation of the Thrifty Food Plan. This has been a crucial and long overdue update, and it comes at a time when it is most needed. Mrs. Cox, can you talk about why it is important for the Thrifty Food Plan to be reevaluated often? And in your view, how often should it be revisited?
Thanks for that question. So as we know, the Thrifty Food Plan update was long overdue, right? It had the amount of benefits people were getting hadn't risen other than for inflation since the 1970s. And we saw how many things have changed from the 1970s to now in how working families consume and cook food. So I think that it was important to have the current revision. As far as how often, I think I would leave that up to USDA because they are better equipped to figure out exactly what families need. But it is something we want to make sure to keep our eye on because times are changing as we see all the time on what people eat and how much time they have.
Well, thank you. The nutrition programs are critical in helping people get back on their feet in these difficult times. And so I do believe that these programs cannot be a bargaining chip that gets subjected to partisan politics. And I see my time has expired. So with that, I will yield back. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Adams. You have 5 minutes. Please unmute and begin your questions.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hayes and Ranking Member Bacon for hosting today's hearing. And to our witnesses, thank you as well for your testimony. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, is one of the most effective tools that we have to combat hunger and food insecurity. In the last year, the reevaluation of the Thrifty Food Plan increased benefits by an average of $36 per SNAP recipient. Prior to 2021, the Thrifty Food Plan was last updated for inflation in the 1970s. Tens of millions of Americans depend on SNAP for their meals, even though SNAP benefits are not sufficient to feed families or prevent child hunger. And that's why I have introduced my Closing the Meal Gap Act, which will strengthen the SNAP program for millions of people affected by COVID-19, as well as older Americans, people with disabilities, children, struggling parents, students, unemployed and underemployed people, and veterans. Mr. Giacomi, states have a significant responsibility in administering SNAP and related programs, shouldering 50% of those costs. So your testimony detailed the positive changes to SNAP made in the 2018 Farm Bill. What should the committee prioritize in the 2023 Farm Bill to improve SNAP rollout for state agencies?
Thank you, Representative. I think you made a tremendous point there in saying, the cost associated and the burden associated with administering the program. That burden is shared not only by states themselves, but also by the federal government, who's paying the other 50%, but also by clients who are trying to navigate these rules that are often changing or difficult to understand or remember or what have you. So if I was to prioritize anything, it would be to simplify the administration of the program for both states and individuals, allowing for funding for increased online or telephonic options, base eligibility upon other means-tested programs. If you're receiving SSI, for example, you should not have to reapply or apply for SNAP benefits when the government has already decided that your income and assets are low enough that you qualify for SSI. Allowing individuals time to do other things than having to go to multiple agencies to apply for different programs, provide the same verifications often multiple times to these programs, allows them to do things like, plan out meals, looking for work, things of that nature. So simplifying it works, I think, for, as I said, both the recipients and the agencies administering it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Cox, during times of economic upheaval, lawmakers have turned to SNAP to make sure that our neighbors in need can still put food on their tables. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, our country experienced one of our greatest economic upheavals with millions of jobs lost and incomes cut. So how did SNAP respond in this time of crisis? And what lessons have we learned from this? And what should we be applying, applying going forward?
Thanks for that question. So SNAP did exactly what it's meant to do, right? It responded to rising need. It responded quickly to those deteriorating economic conditions, and it actually pushed back on against food insecurity and other forms of hardship that we saw, and since it was able to deliver additional food assistance. We saw calls to 211 requesting help with food, and visits to food banks spiked dramatically in the early weeks of the pandemic, but the annual measure of overall food insecurity actually remain level. So it shows that the quick actions of Congress and SNAP structure itself actually warded off a lot of pain. I think what we learned is that SNAP's structure and its ability to expand is useful, and we want to keep that. And I think a few lessons that we can take is that how do we be more innovative in the delivery and redemption of SNAP, kind of piggybacking off of Mr. Beal and Mr. Giacomi, the expansion of online purchasing pilot and the increased use of the telephonic signature, I think, are our big takeaways.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Hopefully we'll take advantage of those takeaways and do the right thing because it is right. Thank you so much for your responses. And Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for questioning. Expanding SNAP eligibility has a proven track record of lifting families out of poverty and improving health outcomes. Several states and territories have received additional emergency SNAP benefits as a result of COVID-19 relief efforts. That includes disabled veterans who often hesitate to apply for SNAP benefits but are nearly 22% more likely to experience food insecurity. Mr. Giacomi, I appreciate your perspective and your focus on efforts to help families with the highest needs. What improvements do you recommend in the upcoming Farm Bill to ensure that veterans are able to access SNAP without facing unnecessary burdens?
Thank you. As you'll see in my testimony as well, my written testimony, veterans are veterans are a group of individuals that have long been overlooked. I think there's a need to look at the income that they're receiving and seeing whether or not that is something that can be excluded in determination. I think there is also a way of looking at perhaps the disability rating for veterans and expanding upon that to allow for more veterans to qualify for SNAP assistance in order to receive the help that they need.
Thank you. I introduced legislation, the Feed Hungry Veterans Act, to tackle this very issue, and I look forward to working to be sure that this provision is included in any upcoming Farm Bill. In our state of Connecticut, 77,000 people are lifted out of poverty every year by SNAP, including an estimated 31,000 children. Broad-based categorical eligibility has been proven to ease the benefits cliff that exists for recipients that are close to the income and assets levels in order to remain eligible. Connecticut utilizes broad-based categorical eligibility to set our gross income limits at 185% of the federal poverty line and waive SNAP assets limits, which would otherwise prevent recipients from saving or having assets that exceeded $2,500. Can you elaborate on the effectiveness of this Connecticut formula and the impacts we have seen on beneficiaries and administrators of the program?
Certainly.
For a high-cost states, I want to just add that we are a very high-cost state, so it's important.
Absolutely, and that was what I was going to mention as well. What we see in Connecticut is that there's residents in around 35,500 households that are able to take advantage of the SNAP program because of our increased gross income level through broad-based categorical eligibility. These are individuals that not only, as I said, are our working poor, they're individuals that are working families that have children. We see that 35% of these families, or 35% of these individuals rather, are being aged birth to 18. So allowing them to get in the door, so to speak, because as I mentioned previously, they do still have to meet other criteria in order to receive assistance, then opens up other opportunities such as the ability to receive WIC, Head Start, the National School Lunch Program, and a host of other areas that allow them to not have to decide between paying rent or buying clothes for their children and feeding themselves and their kids that month. So I believe it has been a tremendous impact on our residents. But as you've mentioned, it is also a tremendous help administratively. It allows our eligibility workers to not focus on minute changes each month and instead ensuring that the benefits that we're giving are correct and are proper, and looking at cases and ensuring that only individuals that are eligible to receive do receive the benefits.
Thank you. Ms. Cox, the Families First Act included provisions that temporarily suspended the time limit for ABODs. While we are coming up on the end of that and the pandemic is still happening, can you elaborate on why the waiver of the time limit continues to be important?
Sure. Thanks for that question. So what we saw in this pandemic, right, was a huge upheaval where most of the jobs that our SNAP participants usually participate in, whether it's in grocery stores, at factories, as childcare workers, as home health aides, those were the jobs that were lost. And so those were the jobs that are still taking a while to open back up. So it's super important at this time that we make sure that the time limit isn't implemented. And one thing that I know we look at is the overall national unemployment rate. And what happens with the national unemployment rate is it really masks local unemployment levels, right? So the unemployment rate in one place and it looks very different than the unemployment rate in a different place. So I don't think we can look at from a national unemployment rate to make decisions on local conditions. So
thank you. Thank you for that answer, Ms. Cox. Seeing no other members on the platform, I think that concludes our member questions. Before we adjourn, I invite the ranking member to share any closing comments he may have.
Thank you. I'll just simply say I appreciate our three panelists. Thanks for your insights. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you to the members of the committee for attending this critical hearing today. And I join the ranking member in thanking our panelists who offered very different and unique but equally important perspectives to this issue that we are all attempting to tackle. As we continue to review the 2018 Farm Bill and look forward to the 2023 Farm Bill, I will keep in mind what each of you has said today. It is clear that hunger continues to be a pervasive issue in our nation. In the upcoming Farm Bill, I will work to ensure SNAP, in conjunction with other federal nutrition programs, meets the needs of millions of Americans who struggle with food insecurity. Finally, as we were reminded by our chairman during the last SNAP hearing, the Farm Bill is special. It is one of the few longstanding bipartisan legislative packages in Congress with a long history of passing with a large coalition of support from urban, suburban, and rural members. Congress joins together to pass the Farm Bill every 5 years because it supports our nation's food system, from the farmer to the consumer and everyone in between, especially hungry children. SNAP is at the heart of that coalition because, like the Farm Bill itself, it provides support to every part of the food economy. In closing, I would just like to invite Mr. Beal to, I would be very interested to hear the end of your answer on the impact on rural communities and ways that we can improve the program from all of our witnesses. Anything that was not covered today, I invite you to share that because that is definitely the intention of every member on this committee. Thank you all for joining us today. Under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any question posed by a member. This hearing of the Subcommittee on Nutrition, Oversight, and Department Operations is now adjourned.